Thanks, Mr. Chairman. I want to go back to a question that was kind of asked before the lunch hour on pupil transportation. And I know you said you had a part of that decision-making. The budget proposes $499 million for that, and it's a decrease of $50 million. We talked about that. That's a 9% decrease. And it says that the budget indicates the savings will be realized through efficiencies from a new proposed funding formula. A couple things. I'm going to give you a list of questions. Can you provide any more details on this new funding formula? When will we be able to see a printout that shows how much our school districts received in 16-17 and how much they're projected to receive in 17-18 under this new proposed formula? Can you explain exactly how this new formula creates efficiencies and cost savings? Will the school districts be required to collect and submit additional data? And then the last question, isn't it possible that a school district's cut in their transportation funding could actually be greater than the increase that they receive in their basic education funding? And I'm just going to opine just for a second in that, for the sake of transparency and doing things the right way, if we were going to have a formula such as this, why wouldn't we want to create a commission like we did for special ed and for basic education? I mean, I actually think that's something that should have been considered. But I'll let you answer those other questions.
So efficiencies within the transportation fund subsidy formula was one of the recommendations that also came as a result of the McKinsey report. So the Department of Education and the Governor's Budget Office, we came together and created a starting point. So there isn't, so first, in terms of the detailed formula, there isn't yet a detailed formula. We're actually looking to both work within the Governor's Office and with members of the General Assembly to really solidify what a formula looks like. So when we identified the $50 million in proposed savings, there were a number of considerations that went into account. First, the current formula was last adopted in 1972. And when we compare 1972 to this year, we know that there are opportunities to find efficiencies in a number of areas. First, fuel cost, fleet management, efficiencies in, advances in fuel efficiency, as well as changes in routes across school districts. We also realize what's different from the 70s is that 80% of our current school districts outsource their pupil transportation services. So we've not necessarily looked at a way to incentivize changes in that bidding process, which is something that I know comes up, normally in conversations that, that we have together. So first, I can share with you detailed formula. We looked at some of those potential efficiencies, but that's something that both the Governor's Budget Office and the Department of Education will work, with the staff from the General Assembly to solidify many of those factors. The printout, historically, the department has never done a transportation printout, so it's not something that we'd probably run a comparison or be able to run a comparison around. I shared with you where we think we can find those efficiencies, and one of the areas that I would specifically, work to advocate, against is trying to require more, data and information from school districts. We have had the, the data, review committee, and we continue to try to maintain efficiencies in data, and then of course, part of our conversation together will be, whether or not there would constitute a situation or a time in which the cut would be greater than the increase. But it's an old formula, and this was one of the areas that was identified, in both the Budget Office and the Department of Education thought it would be a good starting point to move forward to try to find efficiency in that in transportation.
Well, I appreciate the answers. I do think that we need to be more open. I think we need to look at this. There's a lot of rumors out there from different schools about how things are being done and how much you're getting. I mean, like you said, you don't even have a formula, and we're already hearing it. And I do think it's something that needs to be looked at. And I am concerned about schools getting less funding than the prior year when you look at their the total allotment. So I think it's something we're going to be looking at because I know it's a very key part of this budget. So.
Absolutely. And if I can just reiterate, and because I think it's important for me to mention, this is a starting point. We we haven't solidified a formula. We fully intend to work with the Budget Office and the General Assembly to realize, this savings.
Thanks, Mr. Secretary.